Welcome to the Final Girls podcast, where we'd like to think we wouldn't succumb to teen-on-teen cannibalism if stuck in a remote forest, but we can never really be sure. I'm Anna Bogutska, co-founder of the Final Girls Collective and your podcast host. If you're new to the show, welcome. On this podcast, we take a trope from horror history and explore it via in-depth discussions about the movies and TV shows that best represent it. We've now made it to the final episode of this teen horror season. We'll have a wrap-up bonus episode next week, but we will not be covering any more teen horror for the foreseeable. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Final Girls UK. If you've enjoyed this season, please do leave the podcast a review on Apple or Spotify podcasts. I need the validation. Also, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/The Final Girls. There's a new mini-series about the films of the new French comedy dropping next week, inspired by a project I did a few months ago, and a new in-depth review of Jordan Peele's Nope forthcoming. And excitingly, we've also got our first live show happening at the London Podcast Festival. On the 8th of September at 7 p.m, we will be doing a special live show going over the career of the OG Final Girl, the one and only Jamie Lee Curtis, just in time for her final outing as Laurie Strode in Halloween Ends. Tickets are on sale now. I'll leave the link for those in the show notes, and hopefully we'll see you there for chats, clips, and some hardcore Jamie Lee standing. But back to the show at hand. There could be no better way to wrap up a mammoth 40-episode season about teen horror than with a mammoth, almost 2-hour-long episode about the hit series Yellowjackets, which combines some of my favorite things: Mean Girls, wilderness survival stories, creepy cults, bears, and Christina Ricci. Joining me in this episode is the formidable and hilarious Jordan Crucchiola, the #1 online cheerleader for Yellowjackets. As usual, and very importantly for this episode in particular, we spoil everything from the first season of Yellowjackets, pretty much from the beginning. Go watch it, it's an incredible show, and then come back and listen to this episode. I've had so many requests about covering the show, so with all of that said, I do hope you enjoy our take on the first season of Yellowjackets. Are you ready, Jordan? Shall we kick off? We warmed ourselves up with a little Lee Pace, does he fuck or does he not fuck conversation. There is only one correct answer, as we've established.
Yep.
I do kind of want to know where your raging, fiery passion for Lee Pace comes from. Dare I ask?
He's just so...
It's a lot.
You know what I've always found him very, very handsome. Like, he's so handsome. He's dashing.
He should be a leading man. Why is he not a leading man?
Yes. He should be, and I think I have this strong sense of advocacy for him in that way. Like, I think I compensate with a passion for Lee Pace because I'm in the way that like Angelica Jade Bastien is about like James Marsden. Like, what the fuck, guys? How did we drop the ball on James Marsden? She's completely right. And I feel a similar thing about Lee Pace. Like, how have we just let this go? And it was to me, maybe up there with the hottest Lee Pace roles. I want to get his name right. I want to get the character's name right. Oh, come to me. I don't want to search it. I want to search it. Damn it. I'm gonna need to look it up. Okay, I found it. Lee Pace as Ronan the Accuser.
Oh my god, yes! In Guardians of the Galaxy?
In Guardians of the Galaxy, purple, swole, in that whole like ritual sequence where they're like pouring liquid on him and like throwing powder at him, I was like, this is erotic for the MCU.
An erotic thriller with Lee Pace.
This has got past the censors of the Mouse House. Is this like Lee Pace being outfitted with things?
I was not expecting to do this.
Yeah, Lee Pace erotic thriller.
Yes, absolutely. But also
he's got the
Oh,
temperament.
he really does, and it has not been unleashed yet.
Really
it has
does.
not been unleashed. Do you know what? Is this where the campaign starts for the maligned beautiful men of the early noughties? Because I'm gonna to James Marsden, I'm gonna add Lee Pace, and I'm also gonna add Matt Bomer, who is too beautiful and has been done dirty by the entire industry.
All three of those men need to be part of our erotic thriller renaissance that the people are screaming for. That the people are demanding.
I am once again and now disrespectfully requesting Ryan Murphy to message me because I have so many ideas. And all of them involve beautiful men. All of them involve beautiful men in erotic thrillers and Lady Gaga. These are all things he likes.
And yeah, oh god, yeah, that's a real checklist. and really, you know, beautiful men, really not in any way part of the conversation.
They're not, and
the meat of the conversation today. Which just makes it a hilarious lead
I appreciate your segueing into the actual point of this podcast on my podcast. Thank you, Jordan.
On my podcast.
I appreciate this a lot, as I do you and your time and your brain. We are finally here to talk about Yellowjackets, which has probably been the most requested episode. Like, I've gotten so many requests to do Yellowjackets.
Oh, great. Good job, Bloodhive.
And I've been putting it off. I mean, I knew it was going to be with you at some point.
Thank you. I think I am the patient zero stan.
You really are. You really, really are. I know about the show because of your yelling on Twitter about this show.
I won't claim something that I truly don't think, but like, I am arguably America's foremost scholar of Jennifer's body, claimed, and I am Yellowjacket stan, like, #1. Like, I was hyping up the fucking billboard for this show before there was a trailer that sat a few blocks from my house. Like, I would pass by it, and multiple times I took photos of it and was like, who's fucking hyped for Yellowjackets, and posted about it on Twitter. I am the original fan of Yellowjackets outside of the inner circle of people involved in it.
So tell me then, when did this start? How did you learn of the show's existence? When did you first watch it? How did your love intensify as the show progressed?
It was a straight up linear progression with an exponential explosion. I'm sure I had like internalized some press release from ages ago where it was like, shit, these people are cast in this show. It was like Melanie Lynskey, Christina Ricci, what's going on? Like, I'm sure that was tucked away into the mind palace. But it was like, then I started seeing the billboards around, and it like just, you know, and I like getting an understanding of what the premise was. And then then I saw the trailer, and I was like, are you fucking with me? And like Phil Hay, Karin Kusama's collaborator, husband, screenwriter, posted about it on Twitter and was like, Karin did such amazing work on this show, like directed the pilot. And I was like, Karin Kusama's involved? What? And so that was such an intense access point, her specifically, in an immediate marriage with teen girls emotionally cannibalizing each other, possibly literally cannibalizing each other, and then like the details of the grown cast in it. It suddenly, like, the moment that it hit me, it was like, oh, this is such an amalgamation of my interests. There will be no more anticipated show. There could be no more anticipated show. There will be no better show. Like, this show will deliver, and it will be everything for me. And that ended up being true. And I ended up hollering so much about it on the internet in the lead up to it coming out that it turns out I have a mutual friend with one of the co-creators, Ashley Lyle. Her and her husband, Bart Nickerson, are the co-creators of the show. I have a mutual friend with her, and he told her about my fervent standing, and she kindly extended an invite to her home to watch the premiere episode with her and her husband and 50 of their dear friends. And I was the only total stranger in the whole place. And I was, absolutely the most vocal person. They had to put it in people in 2 rooms to watch because there were so many people over. I was in the living room delegation, and I was absolutely the most audible watcher in the room. I was sitting the closest to the television on the end of the couch. It was a lovely night. Everybody was wonderful. We had pizza. It was great. And the episode was, I didn't watch because they posted it on YouTube. It was like, you can access the premiere of Yellowjackets for free on YouTube. I was like, I'm waiting for premiere night. I'm not watching it. I'm not spoiling premiere night for myself. And it was perfect.
Did you tell me, did I make this up in my dreams? Did you tell me that you at one point yelled, "Fuck yes, Melanie Lynskey"?
Melanie Lynskey did absolutely nothing remarkable on screen. She delivered a line. It was a scene where she's in the kitchen of her house. She just did something completely normal. Mm-hmm. And I just said, "Melanie Lynskey, can you fucking anything?" Just shouted it out. Put that
on a t-shirt.
But they put it because it's true. And it was just like, in that moment, it was just like, she's so good at filling the ordinary with so much life that I was just overwhelmed by it in that moment. And God, hello, Misty, you crazy fucking bitch. Like, that, I think that comes in episode 2. Just like the way we meet characters in this show is just so
before we move into the characters, because that's what I want to spend the most time talking about, can you briefly summarize the show for anyone who, for some reason, is listening to this and hasn't seen it, or hasn't rewatched it in a while since it first aired?
hasn't rewatched it in a while. Yellowjackets is the story of a champion high school soccer team in New Jersey. A girls soccer team. I think they've just won the New Jersey state championship with their school, and they are going to nationals. The Yellowjackets are going to nationals. And this is in, I believe, it's 1997?
96.
96. It's 1996. And they are, we meet them on a day at school. They know they're motherfucking champions. We know they are. There's this, you immediately get that amazing sense of teen girl dynamics and internecine politics. Well, they're setting off for this trip on like a private plane, on like a little commuter-sized jet. I don't know where their final destination is meant to be, but over Canada, over the wilderness of Canada, the plane experiences catastrophic mechanical malfunction. It goes down. It crashes in the middle of nothing and nowhere, and the girls are stranded. And the show also takes place concurrently, 25 years later, with a selection of the women. We don't know if it's all of the women who have made it out, or just some of them, but with a selection of the women who have made it out to tell the tale, who were rescued from the wilderness. And we meet them in their sort of seemingly ordinary but unquestionably traumatized lives are playing out before us. But so, like, when we meet them, the effects of what happened in the forest are sort of still distant from them. But then pretty quickly, we find that they are being put on the hot seat by an anonymous person who is digging up pieces of their past and like sending them threatening messages and such, reaching out and getting in touch. So whatever happened in the woods 25 years ago is coming to bite them in the ass again in the present day timeline with our incredible present day ensemble cast. And so we cut back and forth between those two timelines, wondering in anticipation to find out what exactly did happen in those woods, as we wonder what exactly is happening to these women right now. Who knows about it? Who's still out there? Who's still alive? And who knows what secrets they're hiding?
God damn.
How was that?
It felt like you were narrating the trailer, like in the best possible way.
Yeah.
So let's get into the characters. Who are our main characters and the way that they're introduced? Because we mainly meet them when they're older first, and then we meet their teenage counterparts. So who are the main women in the story?
Yes, our key ensemble is 4 women. It is Shauna Shipman, played by Melanie Lynskey in Adultland. It is Thaisa, played by Tawny Cypress. It is Natalie, played by Juliette Lewis. And it is Misty, played by Christina Ricci. That's our core 4 in the now. And Thaisa she's running, it's state Senate or proper, like, national. Yeah. She's running for state Senate in New Jersey. Shauna is a completely disillusioned housewife, with a whole future that could have been and is now existing in suburban malaise. We meet her, I believe, masturbating to a photo of her teen daughter's boyfriend while laying on her teen daughter's bed. And, you know, not a great financial situation. High school sweetheart, married to him, but that's a complex situation. Natalie has been in and out of rehabs, it seems like, her entire adult life. She seems to most forwardly wear the scars of what happened in the wilderness. Is a catastrophe of a person. And then Misty, we meet her only at the end of the episode. And I originally thought she was a different character. But we meet Misty at the end of the episode, and she is working as, like, a health aide. She's a nurse.
Yeah, she's a hospice nurse.
And what we learn quickly, yeah. And what we learn is a senior care facility. And she is wearing this painted on pleasant grin. And the scene she is in with this elder patient quickly devolves into menace and terror when she starts threatening to hurt this patient if they don't comply with exactly what she wants them to do. And she does so in the most, like, courteous and sort of genteel manner. And we are immediately aware of whoever it is we just met with this name tag that says Misty is a complete fucking crazy person. And I think that is, like, how the episode ends. And so, like, one of the last things we see, perhaps, is just Christina Ricci being a terrifyingly pleasant-looking, very curly-haired nurse. And then we're like, what the fuck is going to happen next? Because, like, at this point, too, like, in the trailer, you see the trailer and you're like, we were promised cannibalism. Like, the whole fervor around the show and the lead-up is like, it's going to be teen girls eating each other in the woods. And the first thing you see when the pilot opens is a girl in the past timeline, in the 90s timeline. Winter has come. And we see one girl running, terrified, through the forest, barefoot, bleeding, screaming, and running for her life. And we hear, like, whoops and hollers coming after her in the distance. Like, she's being antagonized by some human, perhaps animal force we can't see. And then we see her fall into a pit of spikes to her death. Then we see a bunch of presumably girls like her, but obscured by masks and, like, thick clothing and, like, sheltering clothing, amass around the grave. And then over the course of the episode, we see that body hung, cut and bled, and we see teeth. We see girls organized around a campfire wearing ceremonial garb, and we see just sort of implied references to maybe they ate her, eating meat that's been cooked over a fire, or gnashing at it with their teeth, close-ups on their mouths, dirty nails. Like, these girls are in bad fucking shape. And so, yeah, we get teased at early on that something very gnarly and malicious started happening in the forest, and we know the plane crash, but those are, like, the only two things we know about the forest. So we're like, wait a minute, how did we get from teen girl soccer players going to a championship to state of nature, Lord of the Flies shit happening in the winter? And then they don't tell you.
I get, but
they sure don't tell you.
I have another thing about the Lord of the Flies shit in a minute, but first I want to ask you kind of, what do you think, or how would you characterize the tone of the series as a whole? And where do you think the Karen Kusama of it all comes into it? Because Karen Kusama is credited as an exec producer, but also notably, as you mentioned before, directed the pilot episode, which for anyone who isn't familiar with this, kind of it's a tradition now, it has been for over a decade, where a named, usually film director, comes in, sets the tone for the series. You know, like, establishes the visual language. And also, I think kind of, especially with Yellowjackets, the tone and the atmosphere is as important as the visual language. So yeah, what do you think the tone of the show is overall, and how does the Karen Kusama of it all feed into it?
Well, I think that, and the cinematographer in that first episode is Julie Kirkwood. who I think just did such a gorgeous job. She has worked with Karn before. She shot Destroyer. She worked with Oz Perkins on The Black Coat's Daughter. Like, this is a woman who is very good with atmosphere. And you look at something like Destroyer, and who is very good with, like, the shittier, darker side of humanity and sort of lensing that into life. And I think what you have with Karn, obviously, is you have this filmmaker who has a sort of beautiful appreciation for the honesty of relationships between women and the sort of beauty of the female experience and all of its terror and gore and all of its intimacy and, softness and brutality at once. And we see that in something like Girl Fight, which she broke through with Michelle Rodriguez playing the lead, a Sundance hit. Back around the turn of the millennium. Then there is obvious, Aeon Flux. Haters are out there. It's a fun time. Just go kick it with Aeon Flux. That movie, not well regarded. And then obviously Jennifer's Body, not well regarded upon release, but entirely reclaimed in the subsequent decade, deservedly so. And this is somebody who takes more. This is somebody who was in the 2000s, like in the 21st century, I would say is a female filmmaker who was taking more seriously intimate female friendship and the intimate details and experiences of being girl in this world in a way that few other featured filmmakers making big movies, were taking so seriously. And so there's like, you watch a Jennifer's Body if you're a fan. I feel like it's kind of a feeder system into Yellowjackets later on. If that movie is a big hit with you, I would imagine there's going to be a lot for you to love within Yellowjackets. And I think like you look at something too, like The Invitation, and Karin Kusama is very good at making something ordinary seem extraordinarily disturbing. And I think we get that very much with Misty as a character in totality. And I think we get that in Melanie Lynskey's life as Shauna, where it's just sort of like that discomfort underneath the surface of her sort of boring suburban existence. And then, you get the girl, you get once you finally, we get so little of them in the first episode, but to shoot that cannibalism scene, hypothetical cannibalism scene, perhaps not confirmed, but I like to think they're eating each other. When you see them all organized in their pagan ritual garb around that fire, to me, that is very evocative of the sort of like dark, stylish minimalism, but like high impact visuals of something like The Invitation, that I think is a very exquisitely rendered movie. It's not a lot of flash, but I feel like it's a very immersive experience to be in that house with those rich people on the hills. And I feel like that opening atmosphere with, the Antler Queen and her minions around the fire, I feel like that's a great Kusama moment.
It's interesting you mentioned two kind of contradictory things about the Kusama of it all. The fact that on the one hand, she is in her very, I think, underappreciated way, a master of the uncanny, in the sense of like an uncanny type of horror that, like, it's so much easier for it to devolve into something purely supernatural, and then it becomes an Ari Aster situation. But her, especially The Invitation, I think, almost suffers for being a bit too subtle. And I want to bring in her short film, which is an XX, the anthology series, which is a sort of follow-up to Rosemary's Baby, which is an ambitious conceit in itself. But it's...
Was that the segment with Melanie Lynskey?
No, that's the one directed by St. Vincent.
That's the one. Yeah.
No, but the one that she did, which is the longest piece in XX, and it's a very grounded, kind of earthy follow-up to Rosemary's Baby, as if, if Rosemary had the kid and kind of ran away with it. And obviously this is the spawn of Satan, so it's not going to be great. No matter where you raise him, he's still going to be the spawn of Satan. But there is this subtle uncanniness in everything she directs, and there is always this kind of teetering on the edge of, is it supernatural? Is it not? Is it weird, or is it just people being real life monsters? And then there's the really flashy bits, and the Antler Queen is kind of that Jennifer's Body mouth opening up and eating someone and being covered in blood, and kind of the prettiness, and especially of teenage girls, with very disturbing, very overtly bloody and gory imagery put together, which it feels very un-Karen Kusama, but when you look at her work, actually it's always peppered through. But in the very first episode which she directed, it does feel like it's a tease. It's a tease for what's about to come. Yeah. Does it ever fully materialize? No, not yet.
No. Like, and when we say what's to come, we mean like in a future season. They're not spilling the beans in season 1, guys. I'm not like this, you know, if you haven't watched it yet, know that like going in, that question will not be answered for you. Like, and because they've got a fucking plan, and that plan lasts for a couple of years.
And I wanted to ask you something you alluded to before. And when I was reading a little bit about the show before we started recording, obviously the comparisons with Lord of the Flies are inevitable. Sure. And it was an inspiration. And apparently, you know, I'm sure you'll know this, but for the listeners, that the one of the creators read the press release that there was going to be a gender flipped version of Lord of the Flies, all with girls, and she read the online comments, and the comments were all like, "Well, that's going to be boring. What are they going to do? Collaborate to death?" And she was like, "Well, you clearly don't know teenage girls because they are absolutely savage." So I wanted to ask you about, what do you think about this setup as a starting point? And, you know, when you mentioned this kind of softness and brutality at the same time of being a teenage girl, what do you think about this premise of essentially teenage girls brutalizing or cannibalizing, like you said, each other, both emotionally and physically?
It's everything. In the words of our dear Jessie from the Neon Demon, it's everything. And I will say, too, on the Karen note, Ashley Lyle is a very big fan of Jennifer's Body and wrote like a whole passion letter to Karen to get her to come onto this project, writing her, you know, and part of that letter was like a Valentine to Jennifer's Body and the impact of it and what it meant to her. So the fact of that coming together is like, yes, these are my people and this is my content. But yeah, I mean, there is simply no more satisfying drama for me, in a narrative than teen girls either going at each other or collaborating with one another to like take down some objective, like some villain, like, just give me every shade of, like, girls and young women figuring out that the world is against them, basically. And, like, it's kill or be killed. And, like, that, like, the process of watching young women and girls discover that operating within this world is something that will have to be a strategic effort for them. And learning how within the capacities of each of their personalities uniquely, they will decide to confront those challenges, to confront those oppressors, villains, bullies, the game of to use or to be used. Like, you know, again, back to Neon Demon, the question of, are you food or are you sex? Like, what is your value as a woman in this world? And there's just no more fun conflict to watch than teenage girls being bitches to each other. Like, it's the meanest thing. It's the funniest thing. Like, there's almost no better in its way, like possibly no better horror comedy for me personally than Sorority Row from 2009, because it's a mean bitch horror movie. And the reason I love Bodies, 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 which is perhaps about to come out or has just come out by the time you hear this, because it's a mean bitch horror movie. And we had a lot of that in the 2000s because it was such a mean and soulless fucking time. But, like, there's something about mean bitch horror when it is done right that it is to me just I think in the 2000s what equated to being a mean bitch and the way in which, like, certain parts of that era don't transcend and they're just sort of frozen in amber, these artifacts of time, is it was like, hey, to be a mean bitch, you're gonna be fatphobic and racist. Like, that's how we're gonna define it. And, like, that's uninteresting. And you watch things, you know, from that time. Now it's like, God, they said that? We said that? We were all saying that shit? But when you watch it done in a way that actually understands that the most impactful and in cutting and brutal part of how teen girls can eviscerate each other is the wit with which they understand how to cut each other to pieces, if necessary. That is evil genius on a level that simply no man could ever approach.
So where do you think this sits? Because this is going to be, I don't know if I told you, this is going to be the end, one of the very last episodes of the teen horror season that I've been doing for the past 70 years, it seems. How do you think the show uses and deepens our ideas of teenage girls and how they relate to each other? Because we see the teen girl versions of the characters in two very different, very extreme scenarios. We see them as the hot shit athletes in their New Jersey high school and the dynamics between that. And then we see them in a once in a lifetime, like survival situation where the roles that they have been prescribed and that they operate within in the high school scenario are completely appended.
My dear beloved Jackie. My dear Jackie. Yes. I'm TV's big these days. Movies have my heart first and foremost. But it's just true with more time, you get to give people more character. And I think what this show, a thing that I really love about this show is, as it is not just a movie, or it's not just like a trilogy, that we ended up getting a trilogy or something. Getting to live with these characters in each of their age ranges over the long term. There's a lot of great sensation you can pack into young girl, mean bitch horror, into an hour and a half, 2 hour runtime. And you can get a lot of kicks with that. But like to allow for the nuance and the teeny tiny character details within these teen girl archetypes to see the depth and breadth of them. And it's not just the fun, sort of shock value insults and, body blows that they can trade with one another. And it's not just like, let's throw a cheap makeout in here and like, ooh, they're bi-curious kind of thing. Like it, as Karen did in A Jennifer's Body, like to live with these characters the way we get to and to so honor the specificity of what makes each of them who they are and how they relate to each other as girls, is like to watch the evolution of Shauna and Jackie's relationship throughout the course of the first season, to watch the de-evolution of it. Like if you've ever been a young girl with a, toxic codependency on your best friend, the way, the peaks and valleys of how this relationship plays out should feel very familiar to you in a lot of ways. And in a way that we are not easily given a character to hold on to as a bad guy. Even Misty at her worst, sort of the closest identifiable thing to that in the child timeline. There is still such an eagerness and desperation about her and such an incredible performance being given by Sammy Henretti. I think my greatest irritation with Yellowjackets in the Emmy nominations is that Sammy Henretti actually didn't get a nomination as well. Christina Ricci is fucking feasting in this role as grown Misty, but what she does in the backgrounds of frames, Sammy Henretti is never not performing in this show, even when she's in fucking soft focus, and it's incredible to watch. And then what we see in the adult timeline, it's really cool. Because the fun thing about high school shows and movies and stuff is like that time capsule of life. Like you look at it and you can kind of project your own nostalgia on it and your high school experience or just be like, wow, kids these days, like they talk crazy. Like there's a novelty to watching teenagers, whether it's like the novelty of projecting your own experience or like guffawing at how crazy teens are in the 21st century sort of situation. But like, to watch the dynamics carry over into the adult cast, and they're so incredibly well cast between the two timelines, to look at each of them and immediately be able to link them with their antecedents in the earlier timeline is like, yeah, that would be Shauna now. Like the performance that Sophie Nélisse is giving, it makes total sense that Melanie Lynskey is this Shauna Shipman. Like to see how Taissa is as a like take no shit, but like internally insecure leader struggling with like her queerness and assimilation versus being a radical. Like, yes, Tawny Cypress is crushing that as adult Ty. And like the way that we see like this teen sort of extroversion and giddiness that comes from young Misty, to watch that honed into like an icy weapon by adult Misty and Christina Ricci, like, and the sort of angsty chaos of young Nat going into the fully unleashed adult hurricane chaos of Juliette Lewis as Natalie gets older, like be able to see the impact wounds in one show, in one season, side by side, and not feel like it's ever forced. I feel like they have done such a deft job at balancing the character specificity and continuity between the two timelines. It just makes the show so rich, and it's like, oh, I care about these people even more and even more quickly, because I care about them. I feel like I've already been caring about them for 25 years because I feel like I've experienced the distance between when they were children and when they were adults. And I just got here. We're 2 episodes in.
I want to ask, there's another question I want to get to about Shauna and Jackie, but we'll get to it in a second. I want to ask about this trauma bond that all the survivors that we have met so far in season 1 carry between them.
So far.
And what I'm interested in is because I think that trauma has become a kind of popular buzzword, especially in horror and crime fiction. Not like, aside from Jamie Lee Curtis's viral trauma compilation, I feel like it's a word and a concept that a lot of people are overusing in their explaining or the motivations of characters or the ultimate theme of especially a horror film that they're flogging. And I feel like in Yellowjackets, it is very much on the surface. It's in the text. It is evident. It is also an extreme form of trauma of like, oh no, this is like a survival situation, which necessarily...
Yeah, like they watch people fucking die.
Yeah, this is no longer being abided by any kind of rule book that they would have been able to have access to. Like, no, this is just like now a live movie, like, you know, urban legend shit.
Yeah.
What's interesting, it's a word that kind of comes up in the very last episode, if I'm not mistaken, by one of the most irritating supporting characters, like the girl who got her leg broken, I believe. And then she stayed on. She didn't get on the plane, but she felt like she had the shared trauma bonding with the survivors.
Yeah, she's been dining out on the fact that she was a like Yellowjacket JV pull-up who didn't make it onto the plane for like her whole adult life. She's like hanging on to a tragedy that is not her own to get some semblance of attention.
Exactly. So based on seeing the characters experience the actual traumatic incident that they're experiencing, well, we're at least part of it. I'm sure we see a lot more in the forthcoming seasons. And their adult selves. How do you think this show actually skirts around some of the more extreme ways in which they've survived their ordeal, but also around this concept of trauma without actually ever, I think, feeding into this now kind of super mushy and quite uninteresting populist horror approach to it?
I think where this show is really succeeding so far is it really is giving us a show and don't tell. We're not getting characters giving us exposition about why they are the way they are. In fact, we have characters avoiding at every fucking cost, explaining what happened to them and what made them who they are. We come to learn there is an entire series of journals that Shauna kept when she was out in the woods, and she has kept them all this time. She keeps them locked away. Jeff, has there ever been a man on TV that we have collectively gotten behind on a sharper pivot from being completely opposed to him than fucking Jeff? My God! The dopey, handsome, small town husband who it turns out ally. Jeff's an ally. Jeff's a partner. We love Jeff.
We stand Jeff.
Like, this fucking douche. It's like, I'm like hoping Melanie Linsky literally kills him like has one of her Shauna fits and literally kills him, up to the point where I'm like, man of the year, husband of the year, partner of the year.
I don't agree, man or husband or anything of the year, but like harmless. Like kind of a flop. He's a handsome flop. Like he will flop.
There's no book.
He's a flop. He'll be flopping around. Like he's a good couch buddy. Good for Jeff.
He is always a great couch buddy.
He's gonna try his best, and his best is kind of not great, but bless him.
No. But he is one of the few people who knows as close to everything as a person could know about the Yellowjackets. Do you know what?
He knows enough.
Secretly read these.
He knows enough to know to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And we respect that.
He knows enough, and he knows enough to know to shut the fuck up, and he has unflappably like, it's not enough to just show up as a husband, but when you find out that Jeff knows, like, everything that's happened, and he's like, Shauna, I love you. It's like, well, that's a real warts and all moment, Jeff. That's like, you are unattentive, you are uninterested, you are uninteresting. It turns out
Jeff is, I mean, not to king shame Jeff, but also he is so uninteresting that his deepest sexual fantasy is to have sex at work. He's the most vanilla
man in New Jersey.
Jeff.
Oh, it's so hard to watch. It's so hard to watch. And you're like, oh, you're right there with Shauna being like, yeah, I'd laugh too. This is embarrassing. And Shauna like wants to get like fucking tossed around and like be dominated and to dominate. So good for her. But I think this show has done a fantastic job of really slowly meting out character, especially for the adults, because we don't know what happened in the subsequent time after the crash, really. Not most of it. But like, we are never spoon-fed what's going on with Taissa. What's happening to her in the middle of the night? Why does she have these night terrors? What's going on? We get little hints of her past. We get visuals explaining like, okay, so this has been around for a long time. We're not going to feed it to you all at once, but you're going to know she's been dealing with this her entire life. With Lottie. Lottie starts like, her medication runs out and she starts having sort of paranoid considerations about what could be going on. I'm not going to say delusions. I don't know if it's real. She starts having sort of paranoid, either fantasies or projections about what's going on around them in the woods that is leading her to think that there is a sort of spiritual element to what's happening around them, and they need to guard themselves in a sort of pagan devotee kind of way to nature and its elements. And then we get little flashbacks to baby Lottie in the car, having premonitions that save her parents from a catastrophic car crash. We see Nat's horrible home life and the absolutely nightmare terrifying thing that happened to her abusive father that has an instrumental role in why Nat probably has trust and love issues in this world. I will say, regarding Nat, for me, it's basically a perfect show, but I think it's one egregious mistake from the first season is having Nat moon over Travis fucking constantly as a child in lieu of basically anything else. And I know it's hard. I know we have to understand, we have to believe why Natalie would be so singularly focused on, because spoilers, guys, the show opens basically with Travis very early on. We learn he has either killed himself or he has been killed, and there is suspicious things afoot. So, and she is so desperately obsessed with figuring out what happened to Travis. Travis would never do this, and I know we have to have buy-in into why she would be that devoted to him. But it makes Natalie the sort of, like, the fucking punk rock one of the group, the bad bitch, the, like, bleached hair, like, smoking cigarettes will fuck you up, like, not a care in the world, gets shit on by Jackie for being white trash, and, like, holding her up, like, it reduces her to chasing a mopey boy around in the woods so much that it's like, are you fucking serious? Like, Natalie, of all people, like, we can't do this crush any other way. That's my only problem with
I'm gonna disagree with you slightly there, because please. It makes sense for me. It is a very light, upending of the trope of like the bad bitch with a heart of gold type thing, and the terrible home life and all the trust and love issues that she has, and also the collective slut shaming of Natalie by the other girls, both in the high school and in the fucking wilderness. Like, oh, you have to worry about bears, but you're gonna spend your time slut shaming this girl who is also in the same situation as you. Basically,
Yeah, you're going hungry and you care about that now?
Oh, yeah, you know, Natalie's out there banging the one other dude who survived, who is not gay on the... I keep saying on the island. They're not on an island, like in the wilderness. It's like, that's what they care about. It's reputation.
Who's not gay or like...
Yeah. They cannot fathom that she would possibly be able to have actual feelings for Travis. So I think this obsession, this mooning over Travis, is not so much a crush. It is this actual pursuit of softness and care that she isn't allowed to and doesn't allow herself because of the sort of the really horrific home life that she has, but also the reputation that she has carved out and lightly either encouraged or not contradicted. Like, it favors her to be the bad, slutty bitch. It favors her up until a point. Up until a point where she needs something a little bit real. And it's so hurtful when Travis looks or treats her, or speaks to her in a way that seems to indicate that he buys into these ideas about her. And him actually saying...
And I think I would have an easier time with that dimension of Nat in the Young timeline if it, like, he is awkwardly, like, pushing away from her, running away from her most of that whole first season in the Young timeline. And I'm like, bitch, how many times are you gonna throw good after bad? Like, honest, like, he's being a teenage boy. He's being dickish. He's being completely in character for a teenage boy who's overwhelmed and in a crisis situation. But it's like, it's watching herself constantly pine for this person who's, like, even for, like, stupid self-defeating reasons, reject her over and over again, that I'm just like, I'm so tired of watching Natalie get rejected and chase a boy. Like, I'm like, it'd be one thing if they were just, like, consistently vibing, but, like, it's a good amount of time. They're about to pretty much graduate when we meet the Yellowjackets. So it's end of a school year. It's probably late spring, early summer. And then by the end of the show, the end of the last episode, we get the first snow. So we go through a whole fucking summer and probably into late fall. And that means Natalie has been doing this crying after Travis rejecting her thing for probably 5 months. And it's sounds like, legit. How many motherfucking time? I mean, just, but as a function of what is television, it's like, I am about fucking spent. Like, I feel like you've given me 3 seasons of Natalie debasing herself for a mopey boy in 1 seasons of television. And, like, I cannot wait for season 2, because a thing we get hinted at, like, it gets ever more consistent over the course of the adult timeline, is like, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Natalie. Natalie saved us. Like, there's this duty of care, and I think this gets to the trauma question too. There's this duty of care to Natalie, specifically, intensely, between Taissa and Natalie, to where Taissa pays for her rehab. Natalie seems to have a lot of money, and we don't yet know where that came from. We meet her in a posh rehab center. It looks like in Malibu. She comes back to New Jersey and gets a classic Porsche out of a garage that she's had kept. And obviously Thais has been paying for her care to a degree, but, like, there's some sort of money that Natalie came into at a certain point that we don't know about. There's
also an implied attitude to money that comes from someone who, like, the source of the money is sort of infinite. It's so infinite that it loses meaning.
Yeah, and, like, and it's in a way that, like, she seems to be out of cash now because she's going to Taissa for a lot of it, but, like, they're into their 40s at this point, and Natalie has been, it seems like, a mess her whole adult life, dealing with addiction issues and mental health issues, so somewhere it has been replenishing a supply of money to Natalie throughout her life, to where she's not just living in a gutter and has, like, a pretty fucking rad rock star wardrobe that Juliette Lewis is marching around.
I mean, first of all, I'm 100% certain that is just Juliette Lewis's own wardrobe, because it looks exactly like her style.
I honestly hope Nat's backstory, a chunk of it, is that she came back and, like, they got media famous and she just basically became Juliette Lewis, like, became a rock star. Like, that she started a band, had, like, success for a run in a way that, like, provided her with enough money that she's finally run dry. But, like, I hope Natalie spent, like, 10 to 15 years as a rad ass rock star who was a total catastrophe, but like made bank being a musical sensation or something. Nobody seems to greet her that way. They're not like, Natalie, like when they see her on the street, but I would love it if that was true. But there's this amazing sense of commitment and loyalty to Natalie that implies she made the great, extraordinary, like either decision or sacrifice or act of heroism that saved them or protected them or allowed them all to live somehow. And I'm really excited to find out what that is. But I think it plays interestingly into that trauma bond connection with all, like to watch Melanie know that Natalie is bad news, but also know that like you kind of have to stand up for Natalie. And when she pushes back against Ty, like, why are you still paying for this stuff for her? Why do you enable her like this? And Ty being like, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Natalie. And then you're like, ooh, what's that mean? And that, and Shauna being like, yeah, well, good point. And just like, and the way that they all are, they hate Misty. They don't want to be around Misty. But also they know that when the season gets toward the end and it gets to be crunch time and things are getting more dire and there's more crisis and crime unfolding around them, we can't do it without Misty. Like the way we watch them have to retreat to these bonds that they even feel like they need to reject, but they know they have nothing else to rely on but those connections. It's an incredible marriage of obligation between all of them, but that is also in little moments laced with like, you know, the beautiful scene where like Ty and Shauna are reconnecting and just like, you know, sitting in her daughter's bed together sharing stories. It's so fucking moving. And the reason it can feel so moving is because everything is so detached and bleak around them so much that it's like, oh, but at one point they were just like girls who went to parties together and had sleepovers together and played soccer together. Like that's also a part of their past. And you get reminders of that before everything happened, they were cute, rude teens living in Jersey in the 90s. And it's nice to remember that they were something before they were a tragedy and a true crime case.
And let me ask you this, because I think there's several ways to go into the show. The way it's been marketed has been very intensely, I think, about the folk horror element of it, because it's the most the most visually appealing, as is the 90s teen girl element of it.
Yeah.
What works best for you for the show? Is it the mystery? Is it the adult drama? Is it the teen girl drama? Is it the potential for a supernatural folk horror? Like, which Yellowjackets is your favorite Yellowjackets flavor?
I am totally agnostic on the folklore stuff. If it ends up being fully supernatural, I'll be like, okay, like, that's a valid genre. It's not something I'm looking forward to. It's something I will happily accept if that's what it turns out to be. If it turns out to be just like the collective paranoia of isolation and like psychosomatic, awesome. I accept that too. I will be a little more interested in that. I think inherently, if it is, you know, Lottie wasn't right. And like, in fact, that they just started like finding patterns enough to where they started projecting patterns on everything around them and created a pagan religion in response to fear and actually ended up doing horrible things in the name of a god that doesn't exist. But hey, we all agreed they do. So that's the same thing, right? Like, I will, if it's more cult leader, with Lottie, I will be more interested than if it's supernatural. You know, a theory, I don't do a lot of theorizing because what theorizing leads to is people getting attached to things they have no business deciding that they're entitled to and then being disappointed when it doesn't happen in a completely baseless way. I'm hoping there's not like a second tribe, honestly. Like, I've heard that one floated around that like, oh, there's going to be another tribe in another part of the woods, like another collective. And I'm like, I hope not. Like, I don't want to divide. We're already dividing between two ensembles. I don't want to divide between a third. And I don't know if I want just like I don't know if I want an external enemy in this show. To me, it is more interesting if the enemy remains internal and if the enemy remains the characters that are also your only allies. That to me is more interesting. And I think that counts as with, again, spoilers guys, how like the last thing we see in season 1, like who the fuck is Lottie Matthews? And knowing that our, you know, I think our big bad from season 1, the sort of Oz behind the curtain, has been Lottie. Like, Lottie is potentially the one who was involved in Travis's death. Lottie was involved in Travis's accounts being vacated of their finances. Lottie is the one, you know, Lottie and her minions, that are the ones sending threatening messages to the women. That is still an internal threat because it's part of the gang. It's part of the Yellowjackets. And it's Lottie. All I want is Lottie, did Lottie ever leave the woods? Or did Lottie go back? Or is Lottie just living in a fucking ashram somewhere that, like, she has, you know, her followers now providing her with grape leaves and, like, fanning her with leaves. With grapes and fanning her with leaves. So yeah, what I am most interested in are the interpersonal relationships of particularly the teenage girls, but it's the interpersonal relationships. It's not even like, I'm not even like looking forward most of all to like, ooh, I can't wait till this gets more scary, or I can't wait till this gets more brutal. I'm not even necessarily looking forward to the cannibalism. I'll be happy when it gets there, but I just want to know who wields the knife. I want to know who has each designation within the group when things start devolving more and more. Because clearly in like that last visual we get of Lottie like praying before the tree holding the heart of a bear, we have Van and Misty behind her like kneeling in sort of prayer and devotion to whatever it is that Lottie sees out there in the woods. And I want to know where each of the girls starts falling in that hierarchy. That is what I am most interested in. And in the present timeline, I'm interested in like how much longer can Ty keep the secret. Her wife has found out about like that she in a fugue state in her sleep fucking kills animals and climbs trees and eats dirt and claws at the ground. Like, I'm interested in how much longer the adults can keep their secrets from the people around them, but also from one another. Because Shauna's got some fucking secrets from the girls, and Misty, she may have hastily disposed of that body that has a very identifying back tattoo on the torso that she said wasn't going to be a problem. So yeah, I'm interested what happens in the present timeline when the girls start finding out that they're lying to each other.
I think you hinted at something which is the thing that I'm most interested in, and it's the micro society that is created when there are no more social norms, when you have to start from scratch.
And Jackie being a key piece of that.
So let's get on to Jackie. And I think this might be where this beautiful friendship ends. Because I feel from having read and heard and read your tweets about Jackie.
Oh, believe me, I know I'm the minority on Jackie.
We're gonna get to Jackie, but I want to weave into Jackie first by talking about her and Shauna's friendship. And you called it a codependent friendship before, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on kind of how does their dynamic works? Because if there is a relationship at the heart of the first season, at the very least, it is the friendship between Jackie and Shauna.
Yeah, before we find Jeff and Shauna sort of in their very briefest of moments of being able to come together in harmony for the first time, maybe since forever, right before their lives are upended again by what happens at the very end of the finale. He comes in at the end and they start like, oh, we can empathize with them and maybe this marriage can work and maybe we're happy for them or maybe we could be. The only sort of romance that really matters, that we're both people, it's Jackie and Shauna. We meet Jackie having completely unsatisfying sex with her high school boyfriend, Jeff, Shauna's future husband, Jeff.
Well, they're not having sex. They're doing some very bad fingering.
It's so, I was like, wow, this really makes the case against me getting involved in anything like this, doesn't it? This is bad news. We see Jeff crawling out of Jackie's window. Presumably her parents don't know. And Jackie, striding out of her house in the morning as Shauna is picking her up to go to school. And throughout the first episode, we see these, like, knowing exchanges of, like, affection and awareness between Shauna and Jackie, where we know, like, they're each other's other. Like, they're each other's partner in this. And they are, when I identified why I loved Jackie so much, it was because I realized that Jackie is a Jennifer Check. And Shauna is a needy Lesnicki. And the reason Jennifer's body is so effective is because you can graft Needy and Jennifer onto so many dynamics that you see throughout, like, teen girl fiction. It was a perfect distillation of that, hyperbolically built out to be a horror film. But like there is such a there's such an invisible string connection between Jackie and Shauna throughout the first episode that like queer shipping started immediately. Like, oh, well, obviously they're in love with each other. Obviously, when we learn that Shauna's actually having secretly sex with Jeff, obviously, like a lot of things I saw, like lesbians on Twitter was like, well, clearly she's just having sex with Jeff because she wants to be with Jackie. So it's like the closest she can get. Just all the kinds of like Kaler truther headcanoning to get yourself to the final result of a Jackie-Shauna relationship. But the reason why it is my favorite dynamic in the show, apart from the obvious ones, is because Jackie is such a perfect vessel for like norms, societal values, expectations being met and exceeded. Jackie is hot. She's a soccer team captain. They are champions. Teachers like her. She is smart. Like, Jackie's a total package, and she's kind of a bitch. And she's the meanest to Natalie because Natalie is the lowest below her on the social hierarchy because she is dirty and she is poor and Jackie is pretty and she is clean. And so we see like these foils for one another in those two characters, but you have sort of Shauna in the sort of the middle of everybody. Shauna's kind of like everyone's friend. Shauna's sort of the one probably everybody agrees is like the most easy to get along with. Everybody on the team would probably be friends with Shauna, even if they weren't friends with anybody else on the team after they disbanded. And what you have though is because Jackie's the mean girl, and not in like a Regina George way, but she's our local mean girl. She's our queen bee. The minute we arrive in the woods after the plane crash, not later, not eventually, the minute that plane goes down and survivors get off, Jackie is embarrassing herself from the go. Jackie is useless immediately. Every idea Jackie has is bad. The seance is Jackie's idea. The dance is Jackie's idea. Social secretary, popular girl Jackie is like trying to fall back on these things she knows work at home. That they work in the world where she is valuable and she is looked to as an authority. And every time she tries to lean on one of those familiar mechanisms or tools, it gets kicked out from under her and she fucks the group up again. She makes bad situations worse. She has no survival skills. She's like, it's like when you're in kind of a weird patch with a friend and you feel like kind of everything you say just makes the situation worse, even when you're trying to like make it better and you're just super in your head about what you're doing. Jackie is that person. Everything she is doing is not only making at times life for the group worse, it's making her situation worse. She has no savvy. She has like no self-preservation instincts in the woods because what would it work as a self-preservation mechanism out here? I mean, back in high school, it's gone. She is like our avatar for everything that the girls are about to leave behind as they descend into a state of nature because Jackie is useless in the natural world and completely a product of what we have decided in society is good and valuable and should be promoted. Where that is all true, actually, Shauna's the bigger bitch here. Shauna's the worst friend. Shauna's the one fucking her best friend's boyfriend and pregnant and not telling her and lying to her about it over and over. And it is so amazing to watch when it finally all boils over, how quickly the camp turns on Jackie because Jackie's not assimilating into Lottie's accumulating cult leader status. She's like, hey guys, this is fucked up. We're killing people. We're trying to kill people and we shouldn't do that. And everyone's like, yeah, well, you're pretty and mean, so you're wrong. And it's like, wait. Reality check. Her and Shauna get into the cataclysmic fight of fights about their friendship. They're airing each other out in front of a room full of girls. And every one of those girls has been waiting to take a shot at Jackie their maybe whole lives, at least during the time that they've been on the soccer team together. They've been waiting to unhorse the queen. Even though No! Any thinking person looking at the facts on paper would be like, ooh, guys, Shauna is super wrong for this one. Shauna, actually, huge betrayal. Shauna did try and kill someone last night. Like, even though we know Shauna's crimes rise to a higher status of, like, from misdemeanors we're jumping up to felonies, because Jackie is so hateable as an archetype, the group still sides against her and alienates her out because she's going against, like, the tribe mentality. And honestly, that is exactly what would fucking happen. That is exactly what would happen. And we hate the mean girl so much. We hate the Regina George. We hate Leah Pipes' character in Sorority Row so much that even if, like, they're probably right, it's like, no, we gotta take them down a peg. Because they are the unlikable girl. They are the unlikable girl. They are so easy to project your bullshit onto and reject all of your perhaps enabling or complicit behavior in your relationship with them and be like, yeah, but they're the mean girl and I'm not as pretty. Even though everybody in the show is a stone cold hottie. Like, it is fascinating to watch the collective turn on Jackie, whose biggest crime is being benign and not helpful, while watching a group of people rally around Shauna, who's the more recedent personality but more sympathetic one. It doesn't actually matter that the facts would bear out that the more sympathetic one is actually the bigger asshole in the situation, because the structure of what Jackie-ism represents is something that deserves more to be brutally taken down. And I think that is incredibly incisive.
Not only that, I would add.
Tell me about why you hate Jackie.
I don't think it's just that. Everything you've just said, I really, really agree with, except for the fact that I don't think that people want to unhorse the queen because she's the mean girl and they've been waiting for their chance. They want to unhorse her because she serves no purpose in this new society. And that is factually true. She serves no purpose in the sense that she cannot even share in their descent into tribalism. She cannot share in their collective shroom trip / orgy / potential murder. Like, even the concept of felony or misdemeanor has no place here. They have all collectively understood wordlessly that some shit will go down that they never want to actually talk about or even acknowledge that happened in the future. So it's kind of like, we're in it together and some weird fucked up shit is going to happen and we're just going to have to deal with it later. Jackie refuses to get on board, so she cannot even be useful by being in the room and acknowledging that fucked up shit's going to happen. It's a fucked up situation. We'll just have to deal with it. She needs to be the protagonist and the morally superior protagonist in every single situation. And that simply will not fly because the rules of their society, not just high school, but everything else, no longer apply. And because Jackie refuses to get with the program, I don't think it makes her a radical. It makes her dumb. No. Jackie has no survival instinct whatsoever. She might be the mean girl in their high school, but she actually fake tries to be a nice mean girl. She tries to rule with kindness, as we see her at the party when when she sort of breaks up a fight by saying something really nice and complimentary about every single girl, which is the fakest shit I've seen in my life, but would absolutely work. But also there's something that Shauna throws in her face that actually Shauna is the bigger bitch, but she knows that. She's not blinded to her own faults or to the betrayals that she's committing, because Jackie is. Jackie is actually the codependent one in their friendship, because Jackie needs a sidekick, not because Shauna is lesser than, or less smart, or less pretty, or less interesting, or less of a bitch. It's because she needs someone to look at her at all times. And she starts to unravel in the wilderness because no one gives a shit about Jackie anymore, because it serves no purpose to have perfectly clear glowy skin, and it serves no purpose to have perfectly bouncy fluffy hair when there's a fucking bear walking towards you. You know what serves a purpose?
Yeah, when we have to boil our tampons so we can use them.
You know what serves a purpose? Knowing about different types of plants, like Misty does. Or knowing how to do her tourniquet because like someone's limb has been turned off. Or knowing how to chop off a grown man's leg. That suddenly serves a purpose. So Jackie is discombobulated because now the truth that was always there but that was very hidden by the different accoutrement of high school royalty, is now in full sight, and not even she could actually ignore it. She cannot ignore the fact that she is now less than a sidekick, and she cannot ignore the fact that she now doesn't even have the ability to make a fucking fire, which is why she dies. And it is the dumbest death in the entire show. I loved it because I could see it coming.
I loved it.
That she would rather die in the cold, that she would assume that she would be impervious to it because she's Jackie.
Yeah.
And she isn't.
Yeah, she's Jackie, bitch.
And she isn't. She's so fucking dumb and unself-aware that she does not realize that she should probably not go to sleep out in the wilderness in the middle of the forest without being able to light a fire to heat herself, just out of spite, just to not ask for help, because how dare they ask that Queen Jackie asks for help and reduces herself to being a human being. Jackie cannot fathom not being the protagonist, and that literally kills her.
And I was talking to a friend about this, and they were saying that, like, you know, because Shauna is very just like, adult Shauna is very like, just sort of like shrug, kind of like a ghost gliding through life until the moment she starts like killing bunnies in the garden and field dressing them to make stew out of them. My friend pointed out that she was like, yeah, and like, no wonder Shauna is conflict avoidant as an adult. The first time she ever stood up to herself for her best friend fucking died. The one time she was like, I'm asserting myself, that person died. And they never reconciled. And there was never closure. It's like, well, I should probably literally never do that again because people die. One of the absolute best moments in this whole season is when it's doom coming. They're all high. Misty spiked the fucking suit.
I will say, I'm not going to defend Misty much because, well, I will because I fucking love Misty. She's a wonderful little serial killer. I want a whole Misty series entirely just about her wilderness years. But she actually doesn't spike it. She doesn't spike it. Like, it's a pure accident. Oh, that's right. It's an accident.
It's the accidental, oh, you have mushrooms! And just her being like, yeah! And then letting someone else cook them into the soup. She just meant to spike Coach Ben's.
I know, Misty's particular brand, Misty's sexuality, and like, essentially, like, she is a sexual predator. Which I find...
Yes, Misty is a sex predator.
A very interesting development for her, especially because the physicality of Misty, both as a teenager and then played by Christina Ricci, is a very tiny, very petite woman with giant glasses who is, like, on the surface, the most inoffensive possible package this character could come in. And it's like, oh no, Misty will literally roofie you, do weird shit to your body, and then, like, probably dismember you.
She will touch you. She will touch your body while you are asleep. She will, like, I absolutely love the moment in this show, in the doom coming. It's all fucked. Jackie has just had sex with Travis. She's like, I'm gonna hate fuck this guy. And it's happened. And she goes downstairs and ends up in the middle of a drug orgy and is like, what the fuck is going on? She's like her and Natalie are like the only not high people in the entire woods. And Lottie, played by Courtney Eaton, who is a clean 6 feet tall in real life, like, comes charging up to Jackie. Like, they're having a confrontation, and Ella Purnell is small. In a cast of petite people, Ella Purnell is small compared to the rest. And Lottie, just Courtney Eaton towering over, looks at her and says, don't you get it? You don't matter anymore. And shoves her into a closet.
Oh, it's beautiful.
I screamed, Anna. I was like, this is the violence I came here for! Like, somebody might get their head cut off tonight. They think Travis is a stag running through the woods. Their eyes are blacked out. They're going nuts. This is the violence that I watch Yellowjackets for.
I released the uncut orgy scene. I think more should happen that night that we were not privy to.
Had to have happened. My God. Everybody just wakes up on the ground. Nothing happened between those 2 moments. Okay. God, imagine Natalie getting back some morning and being like, hey guys, what did I miss? Well, let us catch you up. Jackie's dead. We've organized a pagan religion, and you're in or you're out. Like,
do you know what? It's productive.
Oh, okay. Guess I better make a choice.
It's a very productive use of time. I'll say this: something that Jackie was never productive.
What did you do when Jackie was dead?
Well,
what was when like show and like all the kudos in the world to Sophie and Elise, who is giving an incredible performance as young Shauna. And as it gets more and more intense, like she's so mild through so much of it, and then really rises, I think, to those occasions when the character has to just like unleash.
I really expected Jackie to be eaten. That was the thing that I expected to be the big reveal. Like the fact that she was that she had to serve a purpose in some way for this new pagan society. Yeah. And because she was so useless in every other sense, that the only thing she could actually do was be consumed. She can't even do that. Well, she can't even do that.
We don't know what happens. We don't know what happens the day after.
Well, yes, that was my second thought. But actually, when I went down a little internet rabbit hole after I finished the series, there is a fan theory, which I'm really intrigued by, that says that if there is a supernatural element, even a light touch one, that Jackie didn't actually die despite being literally 50 different shades of blue, and dead in the snow. Yeah. That she somehow she survives because, and this is what they use as evidence, in the scene, the notebook? Yes, in the notebook and the journal. All the movies and the things that she listed were after the year, had come out after the year that they had crashed. So it implies very, very lightly that Jackie did survive, did come back, but then is no longer, we haven't met her yet, or is no longer part of the picture, or is dead for another reason.
For another reason, right? For another reason.
I'm into that. Because you know what? Because I
want Jackie back, so I'm frankly into that as well. I don't want
Jackie back. I want just enough of Jackie back, because I think the actual really interesting character arc for a mean girl is to come back into a world where she doesn't matter. Yeah. Where outside of the wilderness, outside of the extreme situations, she's not the heroine. She's not the success story of the survival story that they all endured. She's actually the fucking flop. It is thanks to other people that she's
Jackie's flop era.
She survived only because of other people's savvy, and everybody knows, everybody sees who she is, and she's no longer hot shit. What is somebody who's, as Shauna says to her in that big confrontation blowout, somebody who's always gotten exactly what she wanted without trying? What happens when you no longer get the shit that you always wanted? When nobody really looks at you with the, as you've referenced it, the pretty privilege and the hot girl privilege, when those no longer are part of who you are and how you walk through the world, what happens then? What happens to a Jackie after she comes back and nobody gives a shit?
It is something that I find so satisfying about this show, is how, like, it does wonderfully effective work of being like, hey, yeah, all those things that, like, you're judging yourself against and that people are judging you for, and, like, the things that, like, TikTok makes you feel shitty about, you know, if you're a teen in high school now, in a mission critical situation, none of that shit will save you. Like, all of those things that people bullied you for, or you got in your head for, or you were self-conscious about, or you had a complex about, like, when the rubber met the road, none of that. If you had achieved every marker of what you were told was success at, like, a teen girl moment in your life, if you had gotten every one of those things and had them dialed in perfectly, you would still be fucking useless in a Mad Max situation. And, like, it's like a hyperbolic extension of that kind of consideration, but it's sort of just like like how quickly, again, it's not even like by the midpoint of the season people start being disillusioned by Jackie. Moment one, when we see she is left Van for dead in the plane, Van knows she left her for dead and is just staring at her. And Shauna knows she left her for dead too. Shauna's also carrying her boyfriend's baby and she's real self-conscious about that. But to watch immediately Jackie be set back on her heels, and from the minute they hit the ground in the wilderness, she never recovers. There's never a bounce back. There's never a moment where the camp takes her side, really. I think it's amazing how quickly we watch people be willing to and able to relinquish those connections to norms as soon as it doesn't suit them anymore. And I think that's actually something that feels pretty real. I think people would divest from that quite rapidly when they realize there wasn't a consequence to not upholding those structures anymore. I mean, and just look at how fucked up things have gotten here in the States when, like, as soon as people were given permission from someone on high to be virulently racist outwardly, like, in the form of a president, like, it became a mainstreaming of ethno-nationalism for one half of an entire country's sort of like political party's mainstream platforming alignment. And all it took was one word of permission from a president. Like, it took one guy coming to office and then we were like, oh, thank God we don't have to fucking pretend anymore. As soon as these girls hit the woods, it's like, well, shit. Like, it's all out the window now, and, you know, now I can push back against you without teachers to tell me not to. And I love it when we start seeing Scott lose his authority, too. Those are some really great moments.
But what I found actually very interesting, and I think it's sort of just planted just enough for it to be really, truly explored in the second series, is that as soon as they land and all the rules are thrown out the window, they start immediately building new rules. They start building new hierarchies. New queen bees, new, essentially kind of what matters in this new society. And it is immediate. It is immediate.
Yep.
And that's what's interesting is the creation, not a collective. I don't think it's collective. It's almost instinctual. It's the creation of a new set of rules. And I think Jackie is the only one who, because she's just a fucking flop, just refuses to understand that the old rules no longer apply and she needs to be able to read and influence the creation of a new structure. And she doesn't. She doesn't because she's busy fucking
she doesn't.
Putting on mascara and creating, like basically organizing a fake prom, which to be fair is a great event, to be honest.
Yeah, the prom could have been a great idea. Let's do a seance. Let's do something that scares people in the middle of woods, and we are totally
Jackie's a sociopath. Jackie's a stone cold sociopath. You know who she reminds me of?
Jackie's a fucking
She reminds me of Angelina Jolie's character in Girl Interrupted.
Girl Interrupted?
I wish.
I love how I think one of the best tricks of this show is how it kind of tricks you into thinking by the end of it that you've watched a lot more carnage than you've actually seen.
Absolutely.
Like, by the end of it, you're like, wow, have 30 people died in this series? And it's like, no. Like, we lost the people on the plane, yes. But like, as far as in the child timeline, like, it's Laura Lee and it's Jackie. And that's it. We almost lost Van to the wolf attack, but we didn't. But like, we only lose 2. And I think it meets out its deaths so well. Well, there's the cold open kill. It meets out its deaths so well. And they're both, particularly after the cold open one, they're both extremely significant. I love how this show, like, again, in the showing don't tell aspect, like when we lose Jackie, it feels like we are losing the girls' last remaining tether to social hierarchies that leaves a complete power. Like, she's exercised no power in the woods, but I think her dying leaves a complete vacuum for Lottie to fill. Because at the very least, the most reasonable thing Jackie does in the entire season is be like, you guys tried to fucking kill someone last night. Like, you can't be doing, like, she's telling people, don't murder people. You're going out of your minds. You guys, like, she's trying to at least be like, hey guys, let's not be fucking killers out here, which is a pretty reasonable thing to say. But with her gone, leaves a total vacuum for Lottie to fill. And when Laura Lee dies, there's that brief period of time where Lottie starts having her visions and isn't quite sure what to do with them and is still feeling a little insecure about them and goes to Laura Lee for counsel. And Laura Lee, the extremely Christian girl, is like this point of connection to a Christian God that we know and recognize in a monotheistic structure. The world's organized around, you know, the Christian God, this other bullshit, yada, yada. Laura Lee is that. And Lottie is going to her for counsel, and you're thinking, and I was like, oh, is Laura Lee going to be the path to power? Because like Lottie's going to be her visionary and she's going to be like the voice of God kind of thing. But basically 1 episode after that bond starts to forge, Laura Lee blows up in a fucking plane! Like, Jesus take the wheel, Laura Lee exploded over a lake. And the one who reacts most harshly in that moment is Lottie. Like, that was kind of the one thing she was sort of orienting around. She's feeling a little scared of her visions and her mind going out of her control a little bit. Was like, okay, I'm gonna talk to Laura Lee about this. She's gonna be my spiritual guide. Well, spiritual guide's gone. So we lose Christianity and God. Then we, like, as Coach Ben becomes more and more irrelevant, we're losing, like, authority figures. We're losing the adults in the room. He's physically unable, and he has no power over these girls. And that moment when Laura Lee snaps at him, when he's like, no, you can't fly that plane, and she was like, and how are you gonna stop me? It's like, oh shit, no one cares about Coach Ben anymore. So we lose God, we kill God in Laura Lee, we sideline the grown-ups in Coach Ben, and then we kill society by Jackie dying. And then what are we left with? Fucking chaos. And that has to organize around something. And that something appears to be the Antler Queen. And the idea of teen girls as representatives for the tenets of functioning industrialized society, of course they are. Of course they are. Of course teen girls are God, society, and Christianity. Why not? Why not?
I mean, that's how I would like this season to end. Thank you very much.
But that is how you end a teen horror
It is
season.
true. That's how you end it. But I do want to ask you a question, which you've already thrown a couple of ideas and expectations around as we've spoken. But I want to ask you, what do you expect from the second season?
A thing I'm really curious to see how they tackle is the pregnancy. Because I know there's been a lot of the speculation around, like, the baby. Like, are they going to eat the baby? Is, like, the only way I want the baby to enter the picture is if we can stretch it way into the future. Baby stayed with Lottie. Lottie raised baby as her own and taught baby that that her true mom was like an enemy of the cause and the cult. I only want baby if baby is gonna be like the enforcing arm of Lottie's will. That's the only way that baby interests me. Otherwise, I am very curious.
I have seen in a chat show clip that I watched of Christina Ricci on the Jimmy Fallon show, I think.
I tried to watch that interview literally today. I cannot watch
it's bad. It's the only thing that's interesting is Christina Ricci is disproving fan theories in this, and she categorically says, no, we do not eat the baby.
Okay. And I didn't think baby cannibalism was, I didn't think we were gonna go Snowpiercer.
But I actually think your version of it is so much more interesting.
I would love that as just like a total gonzo kind of twist. But if not, I kind of would like to see, I would be so curious to see how these writers specifically, considering like the deftness that they've shown so far, how they would confront maybe like, is Shauna going to miscarry? Like, does Shauna miscarry this child? Does Shauna have this child and does it die of exposure or an animal attack? Some harrowing natural circumstance that emphasizes the human powerlessness amidst the awesome spectacle of nature. And because how does that fuck Shauna up? Like, what does that then tell us about the person Shauna became with how she had to deal with losing this baby somehow? And she kept these journals, like Jeff must have known that she was pregnant at some point. And like, I'm very curious to see how what I think will be the loss of this child affects Shauna and how that will tell us like, oh, how that will fit into place with what we know about adult Shauna and how we will see that push her in the wilderness timeline to like I don't know, maybe run further into the grips of Lottie. Like, what do you do when the most catastrophic loss, the two most catastrophic losses you could like possibly experience in your life ever, and or your life to that point, by losing your best friend, losing kind of in many ways the love of your life to that point, and then losing a child as a child yourself. That is something I'm really curious about. And it's interesting speculating about this show because it's like, I have all these things like, oh, here, like, I want to see the thing that Natalie did that saved everybody, but it's also like, but I also don't think that they have this, I think they have it like mapped out as like a 4 or 5 season show in their heads. So like, I don't expect to necessarily find that out for a while. So like, I want to know that answer, but I'm not going to be unhappy if I don't know it in season 2. And of course, we're all wondering, because the casting is so fucking phenomenal in the show. Who is Lottie Matthews?
Who would you like to be cast as Lottie Matthews?
My favorite physical one-to-one so far has actually been, she's a little short, but Shannon Sossamon. I have really enjoyed in one of the tweet threads I've seen, Shannon Sossamon as a Lottie, as an adult Lottie. And that one has really stuck.
You know what? As much as I love Shannon Sossamon, and you have no idea how much I love her, did I take a picture of her in Laws of Attraction, in Rules of Attraction to her hairstylist and say, I would like this, please?
Oh, and that's a tough one for anyone to pull off. Wow.
No. Would I love her to play like 2006 Shannon Sossamon play me in a movie of my life that will never happen? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I can see that, honestly. That makes sense to me.
Stop it. Stop it.
The eyes.
It's
the eyes.
I don't think she's a very good actress. I don't think she can pull off a lot.
I'm not disputing that.
I don't think she has she's very beautiful and like very interesting, even in her sort of woodenness. Like, I still want to keep watching her.
Yes.
But I don't think she has the magnetic and intense charisma that an adult Lottie needs.
She does need to be a cult leader. What do you think? Who have you been imagination casting as Lottie?
Fuck. I'm really blanking now.
I know.
I'm really blanking.
I mean, I just searched Lottie casting Yellowjackets, and just like, it's also people also search for, and it would look nothing like her, but they were in Mad Max together. And just the zag of seeing her, like, the idea of just dyeing her hair black and putting Abby Lee in as an adult Lottie. God. Not the worst idea anyone's ever given.
Do you know what? I've
because she would be a fucking charismatic ass cult
I've got
leader.
3 suggestions.
Okay.
2 of them are from The Leftovers. Amy Brenneman.
Right. Ooh,
I think slightly older, but like just intense, powerful presence.
So powerful.
Yeah,
I
would follow a cult that Amy Brenneman was leading. Carrie Coon, just unbelievable actress.
That's a cult leader right there. Yeah.
And oh my god, who was the third? I've seen someone fan cast Julia Stiles as Van, as an adult Van, which I think I've seen that. So on point.
That would be a really good Van. That would, because like, and that's another thing of like, we have yet to find out who all made it. Like, we don't know if Van is alive. We don't know.
Following the now and then 90s, like, actresses coming into this role, Demi Moore.
Oh man, that would be special.
That would be something else. Demi Moore has not done a good villain yet. I want her to do a good villain.
Excuse me, Charlie's Angels Full Throttle.
Okay.
Come on now.
I don't think of her as a villain.
Cultural reset. That was a vibe shift in the 2000s when Demi Moore
refuse to acknowledge
coming out of that water.
Yeah, that is true. With her like 8 abs in that movie.
And then the mink in front of the fire holding the giant gun.
I didn't think she was a villain. I think she was a disgruntled former employee.
yes, that's fair. It's a kind of a good for her performance. It's a bit of a good for
and
her.
She hasn't done a lot except for audio erotica in a while. So I think it would be a big moment for her to come back to the screen.
I mean, it would be a moment. It would
that would be a vibe shift.
That would be a vibe shift. And now I'm just going to fantasize about it being Abby Lee. Because she's a good 6'1" herself. And yeah, Abby Lee's 6'1", flat-footed. And her and Courtney Eaton are like eye to eye. You see them in photos with each other. And that was when I realized that Courtney Eaton is very tall. And I was like, it's an even better performance than I thought it was. But yeah, like, God, who the fuck is Lottie Matthews? Oh! That is one of the best episodes. That's one of the best season finales, I feel like.
Oh my God. And let's see, what are some of the fantasies, though? Oh, okay, Shannon Sossaman, Maggie Q, Tia Carrera, not Olivia Munn. No, absolutely. I'm vetoing this. It should not happen.
No, and Tia Carrera, no.
No, she's too warm. Like, she's got a warm energy about her.
Yeah, that's not quite right. I can't do Tia Carrera.
And Mariana Smith.
She's also like fully in her 50s.
No, these are bad ideas.
Yeah.
I think our ideas are better.
These are bad ideas.
Huh. Anyway, so I will not be going down a Reddit I've Reddit page of fan casting it, but let's see.
Someone did. I'm now looking at the Vulture fan casting. Someone has suggested Lauren Ambrose for Van, which I think is also a tasteful choice. I think it's a very tasteful choice. Wilder Valderrama's adult Javi, spare me, please. Do you care about us or not?
Oh my goodness, no.
Adult Jackie, in the event that there was an adult Jackie, their suggestion was Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Oh, that is great. That's great.
Actually, I love that.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, especially if she was kind of like cracked.
That would be great.
Yeah. And I gotta feel like, too, that it's kind of like the way the first season jumped off and the rest of the ensemble that's in it, I kind of feel like you have a good shot with whoever you go out to. Like, hey, you want to be in Yellowjackets season 2? It'd be like, yeah. Like, that's not a like, I'm not going to take that lunch. Like, you're going to at the very least take that fucking lunch.
So hopefully we'll be back doing this for Yellowjackets season 2. But
I mean, I hope so.
But before we wrap up, Jordan, is there anything about the first season of the show or about teen girl horror in general that you wanted to say that you haven't had a chance to say over the past 90 or so minutes that we've been recording?
It's not quite teens, but I do really love Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. And I think that movie really does get at something, like we were saying earlier, like the cruelty of horror that around the 2000s very much so. And I think
I'm going to cover Bodies, 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 so we can talk about it when it's going to be out in the UK in September.
Yeah, okay, good. And I think that what that movie captures in spirit is, and it's a sort of satirical tone, and it's over the top, but like, I think it captures a sort of depth of the spectrum of cruelty of young women that I think, again, where it can just be played for archetypes and sort of played for gags and laughs. I think that what we see in Yellowjackets is a really capable and mature demonstration of the evolution of teen horror up to the point where we are now. I think it takes the vernacular that has been developed by this subgenre over time, over decades, and it puts it into a place where and here's how we can do it in a smart way, in a compassionate way, in a brutal way, in a fun way, in an interesting and challenging way, while also still giving you those, you don't matter anymore, and a teen girl bitch fight, where someone throws somebody else out of a house. I think it shows off how much we've learned over the course of doing this genre and watching now Gen Xers and millennials who've been able to refine it from a more unruly time, that the sorts of movies that we were exposed to growing up. And I put in the sensitivity and new kind of fearlessness and boldness and intersectionality into storytelling that we are getting better at now, that simply wasn't on offer when those mean bitch movies felt like they were really sort of clicking on all cylinders previously. So I really like that about it. I really like it as a demonstration of hey, you can do this and it can be every bit as fun and animal brain and adrenaline pumping as you want it to be. And it can also be nominated for Emmys because it's one of the best and smartest fucking shows on television that cares about the women in the cast and these female characters and honors them for the complicated nature of all of their relationships with one another. And I really, that's a good report to me on the state of teen horror, is if we have come to a place where Yellowjackets is possible and where Yellowjackets can foreshadow how much more we can do in the future.
Beautiful. Could have never said it better myself.
I hope that's a good bow on your season.
Is. I mean, at this point in the at the end of the season, I'm like, fuck these kids. Just kill all of them. Kill all of them.
Yeah, you're like, I'm delirious. I am delirious.
Hate teenagers. Hate all of them. Just murder all of them. I might just like write a teen horror movie of my own where it's just like a 30-something millennial just killing all the kids, being like, fuck you, all of you. Just
bloodbath. I wonder if I don't know if Sophie Thatcher's twin sister acts, but she does have a twin sister, seemingly identical. If there's a way to incorporate two Natalies in the wilderness setting just for, I don't know, some sort of supernatural thing, sure. Give me, and FYI, Sophie Thatcher's middle name is Bathsheba, everybody. So that's, I think, just an important detail that we should shout out. I think she's living that real life as like, I think she's like a weird artist and I support her.
That's a great factoid. I hope they work it into the show in some way.
Yeah, Sophie Bathsheba Thatcher.
Hell, if that isn't like a Conjuring Part 6 movie villain, which name, I don't know what is.
Isn't it? I think my last thing has to be, I just have to give it to Juliette Lewis is such a specific, she is a genre unto herself at this point. There is a kind of chaos within Juliette Lewis that is so unique to her. And yet it feels like Sophie Thatcher has bottled a sort of young baby form of that to bring as a logical antecedent to what Juliette Lewis is going to do as the future version of that character that is so fucking impressive. Like, wow. Wow. Amazing work, Sophie Thatcher.
Amazing. So, Jordan, for anyone who isn't yet following you online, where can people find or listen to more of your work?
You can find me on so many podcasts. The Feeling Scene podcast is every week, and that is on Maximum Fun. And I'm talking to guests about characters from film and sometimes TV that make them feel represented on screen. Recent episodes include W. Kamau Bell. Me and him had a lot of fun. Kristen Meinzer, podcasting impresario, talking about Anne of Green Gables. If you see yourself in Anne with an E, check that episode out. Tyrion podcast coming back soon, talking about horror movies with the filmmaker Sam Wyman that happened around the turn of the millennium. The Disaster Pod, weekly, talking about disaster movies. And then the Botcast. There's the whole movie podcast Botcast season that wrapped a couple months ago, and you should just go check out all the episodes of that, especially the double episode about Ex Machina, which is a wonderful time, and my co-host Margot at truly the zenith of her form.
Thank you, as always, Jordan. Always a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Anna.